I feel like this generation's understanding that more than anyone before. And I think there's a lot of things we care about as far as fixing the economy because this generation's having a hard time buying a house. It's not as easy as it was 30, 40 years ago. Our monetary policy is completely destroyed. And it is the fault of people that have come before us kicking the can down the road because it would be up to us to deal with it. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to do that to my kids. Thank you. How many of you guys are here because you know me or you followed me before? Oh, wow. I mean, did a couple of you just get lost? But it's just really nice to see out of all the things that there are to do here, out of all the things that you could have had going on, that you took the time out of your day to come out to something like this and talk about the things that are important to us and our future and making sure that our future is on the right path, not just for us to enjoy throughout our lives, but also for our kids, our grandkids, and many generations to come so that they can enjoy the same freedoms that we have enjoyed and will continue to enjoy in this amazing nation. So hats off to you guys. Give yourselves a round of applause. I really started to pay attention to the votes that my congressman was making. And accountability starts with that. Accountability starts with paying attention. And when I figured, okay, so my congressman's just your typical Texas Republican. He's a conservative. He talks about all these conservative issues. Yeah, sure, that's not a problem. And then one day he voted on a Biden gun control bill. Him and John Cornyn voted for the bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That is going to take me a while to get used to. I don't want you wooing for a gun control bill either, but when it was when I noticed that, I'm like, that is bizarre that my Republican congressman, a Texas Republican, is voting in favor of a Biden gun control scheme. That's really strange. And then I started looking at some of the other votes he was making, whether it was for taxpayer-funded abortion or whether it was against Chip Roy's bill to secure the border, saying that tight border policy is un-American and not Christian. It's a crazy statement to make as a Republican, and the more I paid attention, the more I got angry with the fact that I wasn't being properly represented. Especially in my district, District 23 is West Texas. It's a very conservative district, now more than ever. And I just don't feel like we had an appropriate representative for it. So long-winded, long story short, I threw my hat into the ring because I thought, I might have the resources and the connections to really give this guy a run for his money. Because if nobody challenges these people, they remain unchallenged and they just slide into their job and they continue doing the piss-poor job that they've been doing. Which is why I always like to see bad candidates, especially selfishly bad Republicans, I like to see them get primaried. They need to be challenged. They need to be held accountable because it is the only language that they speak. And so I ran that race last time. We successfully robbed the primary from him that he was expected to slide through. He did not win his primary and instead had to go into a runoff with yours truly. And we ended up getting $13 million spent against us, which, by the way, that sucks. It really sucks not being able to go to a Texas Roadhouse by your house and get a steak or a burger without having 18 commercials play on ESPN2 about how you kick puppies. If it's never happened to you, wouldn't recommend it. Here I am doing it again. I compare it to being punched in the face. The first time, I had never been punched in the face before, but I knew it was gonna suck. But once you've been punched in the face, you know exactly how much it sucks, and then you're kind of hesitant to jump back in the second time. But there are certain things I decided after a lot of soul searching that there are certain things more important than being comfortable. And I think now more than ever with the events of the last month or two, we all understand that now. That there are things that are more important in this life than being safe, than being comfortable, than not having arguments with people, than going along and getting along. We have a country at stake. And it's up to every single one of us to carry that charge forward and to do what we can to protect this country and all of the freedoms that we all enjoy. And so I'm back in the race, and I'm excited. I'm genuinely excited to see what we can change. I think the generation of young Republicans that we have now have opened a lot of eyes, even of the older generations, of things that maybe they haven't thought of, or things that they weren't super sharp on or weren't in their top issues. Things like these big DC super PACs funding our politicians and meddling in elections where, you know, the candidate that's supposed to win or the candidate that should win or best represents the district doesn't because millions of dollars flood in from outside sources. I feel like this generation's understanding that more than anyone before. And I think there's a lot of things we care about as far as fixing the economy because this generation's having a hard time buying a house. It's not as easy as it was 30, 40 years ago. Our monetary policy is completely destroyed. And it is the fault of people that have come before us kicking the can down the road because it would be up to us to deal with it. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to do that to my kids. I don't want to do that to future generations. And I'm not sure we'll have the option. We may not have a country by that point if we do not fix our monetary policy, if we do not get out of this crippling debt spiral that we are in. It's coming down to crunch time, and we have to fix things fast, and I think this generation understands that. What we try to do is we try to do a lot of Q&A and take a lot of questions from you guys, especially toward the end. Just because I feel like that's the best way to provide value to you guys, is I get to figure out exactly what you think is important, and you guys can see exactly where I stand on certain things.
So what would be your either solution to that, whether it be policy or more access to more firearms or from police or whatever?
So I'll answer that in a couple ways, and I appreciate the question. So for one, the vast majority of people who commit large acts of violence, if you're talking about like mass shootings, stuff like that, if you actually look into their criminal record, they don't have one. And so like these are people, a lot of them, and there are some cases where this next part isn't entirely true, but a lot of them have not had a history of like mental breakdowns. They haven't had a history of things that people would on paper say that man has a mental health problem. So it's very hard to do something in that regard without, you know, mandating mental health checks that are fairly regular or something like that, which I'm not an advocate for at all, and there's a couple of reasons why. One, that's completely intrusive, violates the Fourth Amendment, violates the Second Amendment. On top of that, I think it creates more problems than it solves, because I think there would be a lot of people that do need counseling. They really do need help with their mental health. An example is veterans with PTSD. There are so many veterans that I know, even a couple that I know, that have in the past struggled with issues and not gotten help because they are convinced it's going to down the road affect their ability to own guns. And it's sad when you create a system that incentivizes people to not seek help. I think it makes the problem worse. The hard part is telling people there are certain problems you cannot legislate the solution to. A lot of those, the same shootings I was talking about, if you look into the background, stuff like that, one of the major indicators, or one of the major components that they all have in common is you have broken homes, a vast majority of the time. You have absent father figures, you have bad father figures, you have a less than ideal climate for raising a young man with empathy. And there are things that we can kind of do to address that on as far as like bringing back the nuclear family, and certain things that the federal government has done to de-incentivize a nuclear family. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to culture. And unfortunately, we have a culture where the nuclear family is not valued like it used to be.
What exactly would be your stance on abortion and how you would be voting regarding this issue?
For sure, and this is, again, another issue that certain people don't like my answer right out the gate, but I do have a good legal and moral basis for it too. For one, I'm pro-life. I make no wishy-washy nothing about that. I consider myself very pro-life. But I think I would go in line with, which I believe has been the Trump administration's line as well, along the lines that this is not a federal issue, it is a state issue, and that's because of the 10th Amendment. Because I'm a constitutionalist, the federal government, I don't believe, has any power that we have not given it, specifically in writing in the Constitution. And one of those is to legislate, one way or the other, abortion, which is why Roe v. Wade got repealed. I'm glad it got overturned. It was a terrible ruling because the federal government never had the power to legalize abortion federally. It never had the power. And so that opens it up for states like Texas to come along and bring forward something that I believe is a lot more reasonable. Now, the other things I would want to do to go a little bit more proactive on that approach is shutting down any sort of taxpayer access to abortion, taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood or like organizations, and basically just I don't see a single reason why any federal money should be going toward that whatsoever. So if that ever comes across my desk, it's immediately getting shut down.
Thank you very much.
I am curious about your position on foreign aid to countries like Ukraine, Taiwan, and very topically Israel, and whether you support that or what's your position?
So I've also been clear on that as well before. I think that the United States is running out of money. And well, actually, that's a lie. We're not running out of money. We ran out of money a long time ago. We're treading water from about 8 feet below the pool line. So I don't see a single reason where, and there's certain scenarios where, like, I understand there's investment and things like that that are for the purpose of, U.S., defense, or for, bolstering our own economy, our own economic relations, whatever. But just this foreign aid, where out of the goodness of our heart, we are sending billions of dollars to foreign countries, makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't think we should be spending a single dime of American taxpayer money outside of the United States when we have roads that are destroyed, veterans that are homeless, and a national debt that is going to enslave our grandchildren if we do not turn it around.
On events like drag queen events like Dragland that promote gender ideology and sexualized public spaces on campus, and do you see this as a degradation of our values, basically, of Texan values, of Aggie values, and the values that made America great in the first place?
What's funny about those, the drag queen story hours and stuff like that, is that they never seem to do them at old folks' homes. Though I'm sure those people would love to be read to. They always target the children, and they get really offended when you point that out. I don't know if there's a correlation to anything, but I actually got into a fight at one point, I'm pretty sure, with the former mayor of San Antonio on Twitter. I'll have to look that back up, but because he was supporting the downtown area, they were doing some, kid-friendly drag story hour thing or whatever, and he's just like, oh, this is great. And I told him that I was going to personally rent a wood chipper to park out front.
The Swiss, where they don't have school shootings, they don't have stuff like that because everybody's basically armed. There's huge amounts of guns there, but it's more of a safe environment.
Well, so there's a couple nuances to that. And it's an interesting philosophical question. There's also a lot of differences between Switzerland and the United States, which contribute to why they don't have as many shootings and stuff like that. For example, if you took out inner city gang violence in all American cities, we're actually comparatively extraordinarily low as far as actual gun violence. You take out suicides and major cities, we're at the floor, right? But one of the things that I would counter that with, as far as Swiss gun culture, is that it's very collectivist, as is the rest of their country. It's their mindset is very collectivist. That's why they're basically a socialist country. And I think that the United States thrived and thrives and has always thrived on dangerous freedom, the individual, the rights of the individual, and I think through strengthening oneself and one's family as the individual and as one's family unit, and then later the community, and then the church, and things like that. I think strength comes from the individual, and that's the way that our entire country's been laid out to this point, and I think that's what makes us great.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Appreciate it. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys, and you guys for giving me a platform. And again, thank you for what you guys do. Because like I said, I know that there's a lot of things that you could be doing right now, and every other time you guys have meetings or you do door knocking or volunteering or anything else, there's a lot of other things you could be doing, but you choose to set aside instant gratification, what feels good now in the moment, for your future and for the future of the country. And I can't think of anything more commendable than that. So thank you guys so much, and I appreciate you for having me out.